Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here. I'm joined as always by Rory O'Neill, and we have brought we're doing a dual code effort this week, which I can't even say. I've got Anthony Daly and Ciaran Whelan with us. How are you doing, lads?
Hey, Mikey. Good, Mikey. Very good.
Good stuff. Well, look, a unique league is finished in both codes with very few winners. So I said we might as well bring together the football and hurling just to kind of go through a couple of the bullet points, as we have a quiet week this weekend. We've got a Camogie final and a Division 3 football final. But not a huge amount going on. It's kind of a fallow week before the madness of the summer begins. So in a vacuum, stories tend to develop and gain legs, Ciaran, and one story that's gaining legs this week is that we have seen the last of Stephen Cluxton in the Dublin jersey. You got anything more solid on this first? Give us a scoop, quick.
Well, I hope we haven't seen the last of him in the Dublin jersey, Mike, if I'm being honest with you, but he's missing in action by all accounts. And you'd be hoping that word would filter through that he's back in the squad, but I don't think that has happened to date. Strange thing about Cluxton is he's never not played in a league game, you know. He's always played at the latter end of the league. He's always contributed in some shape or form to the league when Dublin got to the latter stages of it. I know this year was different, but the fact he doesn't appear to be back in the camp is worrying, I think. We all know the type of character he is, you know, that if he decided to call it a day, he mightn't tell anybody, you know what I mean?
There'll certainly be no GPA statement anyway.
He just like disappear into thin air and then in again, you know what I mean? But listen, it's a concern. I know he's touching 40, but like, you know, what he means to that Dublin team is massive. And I'm sure all the other competitors in the teams that are looking to take the Dubs down a notch or two are looking on the outside saying, I hope to God he doesn't come back, because, you know, when it comes to the real pressure cooker time in a match, you know, in a big games, we've seen him in the second half of All Ireland finals just deliver clinical performances. And, you know, he's the type of player that when he has been rattled or he has one or two that goes astray, he's able to get it back on track quickly, and others may not be in that position to do that. So by God, I hope he's back. And if he's not, I think it'd be a significant weakness in the Dubs. Like Evan Comerford is a great goalkeeper. You know, and I've known Evan since he's grown up, but like he's still a young lad, and he still hasn't been put into that melting pot probably in Croke Park on a big day game when you have the likes of David Clifford or Sean O'Shea on front of you and stuff like that, and the Kerry forward line that's coming down the track. So yeah, we'll have to see. The word is not good at the moment, so I've no inside track. Nobody knows whether he's retired, but he's certainly not back, which is the worrying part.
Yeah, God, we will. If he is gone, we'll miss the saves. We'll miss the commanding of the 6-yard box, and obviously we'll miss the kickouts. Most of all, we'll miss a man who really marches to the beat of his own drum. Dalo, like as Anthony said, Evan Comerford's a fantastic goalkeeper, but there's many a footballer or hurler who are more than the sum of their parts, and I think Stephen Cluxton is an archetypal example of that, isn't it? He brings way more than the skills of a goalkeeper to the Dublin team.
Yeah, Mike, he's an icon, really, isn't he? People, you kind of forget how good of a goalkeeper he is. In one way, he's just that figure that commands such respect. It's like, I suppose it's like maybe playing with 15 and a quarter players with a fella like him in goal, because they bring just that bit extra to the whole team. And I think other teams, and they're going in, as I mentioned, Evan Comfort, great keeper, has done nothing wrong as far as I can see, but it's just that factor that Cluxton, you have to get past Cluxton. And like, I would say that's massive for Dessie Farrell as well as a manager. I know myself, when I was manager of Clare, I suppose I would have gone in to do 2 years, Mike, and beaten tragically from our point of view against Cork in a great semi-final in 05. And, you know, County Board ran to me to stay on in 06, but I would have thought I kind of largely based my decision on Sean McMahon staying on for another year. You know, he was giving up, and that was probably our mutual understanding the whole year that I'd give it another year and he was going to give it one more year. He was the captain, massive guy, he played beside him for years, but just that figure he was. And Brian Lohan and himself both stayed on, but I think Shawnee, for me at the time, was maybe huge influence on me staying on. So that I tell you, I suppose, and then Cluxton is even in, 6 in a row done, and I think every other county in Ireland would be glad to see him gone, but great, huge loss to Dublin, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Rory, me thinks he might just be going just so he doesn't have to make another acceptance speech in Croke Park. He never had much to say, but he's certainly running out of ideas now. Get away from it.
He's fascinating figure in loads of ways. I mean, the most iconic moment, I suppose, around his entire career will probably always be the 2011 final. Now we're speaking about him here, like he is gone, but I think that will be absolutely the most. I mean, a goalkeeper to kick the winning point in an All-Ireland final, it had not been done before, surely, did it? No, there's no way, not that I can remember anyway. And the pressure that was on, given the fact that they hadn't won it for so long. It was a handy enough kick, he reckons. I think he gave an interview, one of the rare interviews, but just the pressure
handy
on
when
him,
they go over. Right?
And I suppose that, and the thing about him, like that sort of kick started, like he had two kind of careers. He had the first 10 years where, I suppose there was a lot of frustration. And then he had the second 10 years where they couldn't stop winning. So it's an extraordinary career, an absolutely extraordinary Gaelic football career. He's just he'll go down as one of the most iconic figures to ever play the game. Certainly one of the most influential. And I think it would be a real shame if he does walk out in classic Cluxton fashion, which is what he probably will do. But because I think the bloke deserves a little bit of a better sending off than just to slip away into the night, almost, unbeknownst to everybody.
Jeez, do you want to punish him, Rory? I can't think of a fate worse than death for Stephen Cluxton to have a fuss made over him. What do you think, Whelan? He will just give him a crawl.
I wouldn't be writing him off just yet. Like he could be arriving at training tonight with his bag getting ready for champions.
He could,
So he's definitely not gone. But it's not even the impact on the pitch. It's off the pitch. And Rory, you touched on it. Obviously, listen, I played with him from the start when he started his career, and I always felt that, even going back as far as 2001 when we played the 2 games in Thurles, and he had played in the Leinster Championship that year, and I always felt he should have been in goal.
He was a sub that day in Thurles, wasn't he, Wheelo? Yeah.
Sub that day in Thurles, and you look at Maurice Fitt's point. What did it come from? A kick out.
A kick out. Yeah.
So you always look back and you're thinking, like, if Cluxton had been in,
no, there's no Maurice Fitz.
Yeah. But like the thing about it is, he also learned he probably learned so much in those first 6-7 years, integrating into county setup. He learned the pitfalls, he had the hurt, he had everything that went with it. And then, to turn that corner in 11, to be instrumental in it, and then to captain the team. And I think it's the standards that he set. And, even within that dressing room, he wouldn't hesitate to tell somebody where their standards have dropped. He set that bar. He was the guy there now before training. You say that was his easy kick. He'd probably taken that kick 1,000 times, before he got it in 2011. So it's all the,
he made it look easy.
All the sums that make him such a brilliant, iconic player. But I'm not writing him off yet, though, lads. I'm holding out a bit of hope that he's going to.
No,
we'll see him Sunday week.
But the one thing though, Wheelo, and I think you made reference to it earlier, and Mikey as well, and the veil of invincibility just drops ever so slightly again, on top of Jack McCaffrey, on top of Dermot Connolly and Bernard Brogan and Paul Mannion and whoever else, and it just brings them ever so slightly back to the pack, the chasing pack of one. And it just makes, it opens the All-Ireland up to a 2-horse race for once.
In context, and I know people turn around and say, Dublin have all the depth and they've someone else coming and they've Con now and they've Ciaran. But if you go back and you look at the All-Ireland wins and you look at the roles that Mannion played in, Dermot Connolly played in them, Jack McCaffrey played in them, Cluxton, the clutch moments, you know what I mean? The clutch moments when the game was in the balance, when a goal was needed, when an equaliser was needed, when a score was needed. They all played massive contributions in the 6 in a row. So if you're looking from the outside and you're saying you're taking that quality of player out, yes, there's good replacements to come in, but you got to then ask the question: is the depth behind them? You know, does the Dublin bench coming into the championship this year put the fear of God into you like it did 3 years ago when, you know, you had, you know, McManam coming off it, you had Connolly coming off it, and you knew they were going to roll someone in with 20 minutes to go. And if you're a defender, you're there with your tongue hanging out saying, Jesus Christ, this fella's coming in now.
That's all I need.
All that same you know, that same threat. Not too sure they do, but listen, we'll find out in a few weeks, won't we?
Well, we're going to jump around here a bit because, as I said, we're just having a little rapid fire chat here in our fallow week. Dalo, is there a chance that peace is going to break out in the world of hurling now, and we might actually just talk about the games?
Controversial.
I think is there hope from that? Is there hope from that last round of games, Dalo? The last 2 rounds of games, the free counts are down. People seem to be talking a little bit more about the performances and less about the referees and the slitters, and, you know, maybe a little bit less angst in time for championship.
I think so, Mike. Yeah, you have to say that. I think the refereeing got a little bit, you know, looser, for want of a better term, in the last couple of games. The break was significant, and then we came back, and everything seemed to be up a level, and the refereeing was down a level, a little bit, if you know what I mean, in a good way. I think they just took it back. See, I think, look, normally I often have this old banter or discussion with Joanne when we on live. Maybe she'd say, "But sure, that's a free." But sure, I'd say, Joanne, it won't be a free in August, like, or, you know. So like, that is the case, I suppose. And we want to see free flowing stuff. There's a lot of debate about the splitter and all this sort of stuff. But I think, look, we'll have great games. We've great games to come. You only think of the games that are ahead, starting straight away with Clare Waterford, with, you know, Waterford looking to be serious favourites in that early on, and then all of a sudden now Clare show a bit of form and beat an unbeaten Kilkenny coming into it, and people are saying, you know, Clare are coming, and this could be closer than we think, and the winners of that play tip. So it's there's so much to look forward to. I think we're in for a fantastic season. I would say the basics haven't changed. My styles of play have changed. Someone is going to come up with a way of beating the Limerick style soon. There's no doubt about that, and other teams will look at that then, and you know, something will evolve from that. And look, I think it's going to be great. I was never that down on the whole thing. I have to say, I was never, you know, there was some games where you felt during the league that teams weren't up for it. I would say Cork coming to mind, going to Limerick a couple of weeks ago, and you can understand they have to take them on again in a massive straight shootout Munster semi-final. So that's the big thing. The league this year, we had no break, you know, straight into it. So there was always going to be a little bit of shadow boxing, but there'll be none of that come Sunday week. It's going to be.
I was going to ask you both. I'll start with you, Anthony. Just what do you make of? I know it's not a permanent thing. It's in a COVID year, and that's why we've had this very, very quick kind of, you know, almost four game league now with a 1 week break and then into the championship, as opposed to maybe an 8 or 9 game league with a month long break. Where so you learned a lot about teams and then they went away for a month. Now you've learned a lot less about teams, but they don't go away at all. So what we saw last week from Clare and Waterford is probably largely what we're going to see in a week's time, isn't it?
It is, and that's kind of the beauty of it, Mike, is in one way, the games that throw up like Clare and Kilkenny, you know, Waterford and Galway is possibly the game of the league. They're the kind that you see, you might meet them, and the hurling pool is that small that there's a very good chance you will meet in a quarter-final, a semi-final. But when you're in Munster and they're in the Leinster Championship, you can have a real cut off each other in the league. Whereas sometimes a bit with even the Tip Waterford game, a lot of people will see that last Sunday's game, as possibly Waterford beating Clare, so they'll meet again. So how hard we're Tip trying and all this. So they're the awkward ones. The overall league, it was good. I enjoyed it. I'd like a final, though, Mike, I have to say. You know, we may well get a final in the hurling league with a possibility of a Leinster final thrown up the league final as well. But I'd like a final. I have to say that I don't need the competition, or at least a trophy presentation, and we leave it on a league basis maybe, but have it coming down to that last day where the winners. You know, we could have a helicopter going between Thurles and Nolan Park, or you know, with the cup, and I think that would be good as well. But we need a finality to it anyway. I would say that, but obviously we were under constriction, so we you know, we had to take what we got.
Yeah, how did you think it worked in football, Whelan? Because obviously, as Anthony alluded to, kind of the shadow boxing there, most pronounced in Ulster, where, you know, all the contenders for the Ulster Football Championship, basically, you'd have to say, no offence to Division 4's Cavan, but all the leading contenders for the Ulster Football Championship were lumped together in a mini group. The games were very competitive. We mentioned it here before. There was usually a 1 or 2 point difference between those games. They were fantastic in Division 1 North, but how much can you believe of it? Or do teams have the luxury of shadow boxing when these are basically the only competitive games they have before their championship?
Yeah, like I think there was always going to be an element of shadow boxing. I'll be with Dalo that disappointed that there's not a kind of a final. I think Dublin and Kerry final certainly would have given us something to whet the appetite before the league. But it's very hard to, definitely that Northern group, Mikey, there was very little in it. And I think different teams have different objectives. You know, if you look at maybe Donegal, you know, built too early in the last couple of years and saw the league as kind of just edging their way in and looking at players and taking a few more risks and stuff like that. You know, Tyrone up there were trying to change their style of football from Mickey Hart, so they're kind of in transition and working on things, and they got a bit of a lesson, you know, last weekend that when you play man-to-man football against some of the good teams, sometimes it comes back and it bites you. And Galway got a similar lesson at times last year when Pádraig Joyce took over and was trying to change their style of play. You know, Armagh, for me, are a team that's definitely building, worked on their defensive structure. They have really good quality forward. Those two O'Neill's brothers are top-class forwards, and Grugan's playing well, Stephen Campbell playing well. So, like, Ulster looks wide open, but I do think there was definitely an element of risk taking in the league. I think we're going to see, it was fantastic, right? And it was brilliant. Really enjoy the matches, end-to-end stuff, load of goal chances and stuff like that. But I think teams will work more on their transition back to defence. You can definitely see the games the weekend, some of the competitive games, the relegation games, where there was more emphasis on maybe dropping bodies back, protecting that D a lot more closely than they had done in recent weeks. And like, realistically, if you're in Ulster, you don't really want to show your full hand when you're going to be coming across these teams in a couple of weeks' time. So yes, they definitely took it serious. There's no doubt about it. But I definitely think there was a little more risk taken. I think things will certainly tighten up. And the Ulster Championship looks very level-headed. But I suppose getting back to it from even the key teams, Dublin just played against whoever they came up against and whatever system they played, and looked like they were in kind of third gear. Didn't have to show much intensity over the 3 games, and they have a Leinster Championship they have more time on their hands to get to the peak level they want to be. Well, Kerry had a point to prove after Cork last year, the pressures during the winter. They had to lay down a marker, and by God did they do that. And they look a threat. But the hype is building in Kerry, and of course, anytime us Dubs add to that with intent, we're accused of just trying to build them up. But they're good at that themselves, you know what I mean? So, but it all leads to an interesting year ahead. There's no doubt about it. I thought the league was fantastic, but an awful pity we didn't have finals. I think.
Yeah. I thought Whelan as well. I thought Whelan as well. Monaghan were a big story for me out of the league. I mean, particularly last Sunday. I just think there's just something about them.
Yeah,
the way they get to max out of themselves every time. Like, they've maintained their Division 1 status now again, having come through that little mini Ulster group, and then have to play Galway, who were, still improving and probably should have won the match, but they stuck in there. They're just the resilience they show.
They shouldn't have been in it.
Yeah.
Either to Dublin or Cork or down.
Yeah.
Zero.
Throw them straight out, Dalo. Throw them straight out.
Out of the league, they should have gone.
Yeah.
I thought, in fairness to them, I thought they showed great character on Sunday to hold in there, Rory. And I thought, okay, their weakness has been they've picked up 6 or 7 black cards, and that's something that they've got to work on, because that can hurt teams. But maybe it's the fact that we're getting used to playing with black cards. But during those periods, I thought tactically they were brilliant, the way they kind of dropped back. They sucked the life out of the game. They slowed Galway down. They stayed in there. I thought Rory Begum was brilliant. You talk about goalkeepers, lads, but this guy now is beginning to play as an extra defender, and he's very comfortable in possession, and he's actually creating that overlap coming out, and he's not being tracked. And we saw he got right up the field at one point later in the game. But I thought they controlled the game brilliantly to hang in there with Galway, just to hang in there, because you take 2 black cards in the second half of a game when it's coming into the last quarter, it's going to hurt you. There were stupid black cards. One was for dissent, that was an interesting.
Unusual, yeah.
You know, I think it was for abusing. I think it was from what I can gather, it was from abusing a fellow player or an opponent. You know, which again, you know, is that something you're going to see consistently every week? I'm sure there's still lads out there telling each other what they think of each other. You know what I mean? But they dealt with it. They dealt with it really well. And the thing about Monaghan is they still have McManus. Now, obviously, Conor McCarthy and Jack McCarran are great talents and on their day can burn anybody. They just need to get more consistency out of them. But in terms of the resource they have, they're continuing to punch above their weight. And they competed well in that group. So they'll be they're on the right side of the draw as well, you know. So they could be a factor in Ulster.
Anthony, on an individual basis, who's impressed you in the hurling league? What players have stood out? Because there has been an opportunity for quite a few new players due to injuries, due to just the nature of the league, where it's been kind of quick and fast and hot and heavy, and teams have had to rotate. Has anybody caught your eye? Anybody new?
Well, I'd say anybody new.
Concannon. Is Concannon new? He's not really new.
Though, Rory. I would have Concannon down as possibly the player of the league. Him or Kyle Mannion. I think Galway probably got the absolute most out of the league in terms of experimenting and that kind of thing. But new, I suppose, look, there's a few lads around the country, but I suppose you knew if you do well in the league game, Mike, you need to carry it into the championship. I know here in Clare, we'd probably looking, Mark Rogers would be starting, I'd say, now against Waterford, and you'd be looking for him to go well, and he's young and new. Galway, there wouldn't be too many new, I'd say, but those guys, what the real difference for me is those guys that we would have seen as kind of peripheral to that Galway team, you know, they'd be thereabouts, they'd be in their 20. They're becoming leaders very quickly. You know, it's wrong to say that the two Manions wouldn't be leaders, but they really have taken over sort of now from Joe and from Gerard McInerney and from Dahi Burke and these lads, Johnny Cohen, and they've put their own stamp on that team. So for me, I think Shane Bennett coming back has been huge as well. Like, I think, what an addition. Like, I mean, this guy, he's not a young lad, but he's not middle 20s, but a really brilliant forward who just opted out, and to have him back now with his two brothers and the form of Desi Hutchinson against Hip, the two goals were just out of this world. I think those guys, they look very strong. And I'm not building them up now from a clear point of view, but they do look, with Liam Cahill year 2, to be settling down. Who else? Cork, obviously, I have to say Jack O'Connor has made a huge impression and really seems to have nailed down his place. So I think, but you really have to do it in the Munster Championship, in the Leinster Championship, to be considered as if it's working for you. So good few fellas putting up their hands. Galway, to me, look to have made the most progress from the turn of the year to now.
Just quickly, you mentioned Waterford, and it seems phenomenal that there's such positivity around them, given the retirements, injuries to key players, and they could be getting stung again now with Prunty, and it doesn't look great for Gleeson either. We haven't heard any update, but soft tissue injuries, 3-4 weeks seems to be a realistic assessment. But as you mentioned, the Bennetts, Desi Hutchinson, they're a very exciting team who've had a fierce amount of turnover in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, the full back one would be real. I know Jeannie Mackey mentioned Austin in the same breath, and we're saying the full back one will be more of a loss nearly because he's been so solid, and he's been kind of the up and coming full back of the country, really. Prunty,
well, especially Daly on the back of losing Tyg de Bruin from 6, and now that's basically the spine of their defence that they could be missing, which is a massive blow.
It is, yeah. And I still, if you often think he will. You hear the rumours, and we're talking about Clucko is a different thing, I suppose. And the rumours around Clare is that David McInerney won't make it, and a big doubt now about Shane O'Donnell. But how often do we see these fellas, the last Thursday night, and they take full part in training or whatever? Yeah. So you look at every manager play down that play up that he's a few problems. So we wait and see. But he would be a huge loss on top of Tyg Burke. You're right, Rory. But Iarla Daly has settled into 6, and they look to have options at full as well. I mean, they actually, when the two lads went off against Tipperary, it didn't halt their gallop any bit. I mean, everybody that came on looked to be making an impact, and huge options now in the team. And they look to have a really, really strong squad. So I think most people, if they were picking their 3 going forward, and this might be harsh on Kilkenny, they'd probably say Limerick, Galway, and now Waterford. I'd say people looking at the panels and who has the most balance and the most room for a short run, bang, bang, bang championship. Possibly 3 games to win Munster. They'd say Waterford are up there with anyone in terms of the depth they have.
Yeah. Ciaran, from a football point of view, any individuals that stood out for you over the last month and a half?
There was a young guy called Clifford, I think, playing for Kerry.
He could be huge.
No, but actually, mention the name Clifford. I actually think his brother has done very well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought,
Paddy has definitely added something different to the Kerry attack, and I thought himself and Darren Moynihan, and the way that the Kerry attack now can rotate with Geaney being able to go in and out, and Sean O'Shea spends a bit of time in there with Clifford. But definitely in terms of the link play and getting it through into the danger zone, I thought Paddy Clifford has been a great addition to them, as well as Darren Moynihan. Anybody new, probably, like the likes of young O'Mahony in Cork looks like somebody.
He's gone now. He's gone now for
injured, is he?
Gone now for 10 weeks, hamstring tear.
Massive loss, because Cork you felt Cork needed somebody in Munster they needed a springer that was going to come in and cause a little bit of trouble, But other than that,
has Paddy Small kind of cemented his place in the Dublin starting 15 finally, Wheelo, would you think?
Yeah, he's definitely pushing for it. There's no doubt about Rory. And I suppose the other factor you have to look at is in terms of the role of Cormac Costello and the scores that he put up again in the league. And, a lot of people are talking about Dean Rock automatically coming back in. Does he go both of them? Does he have to go one of them? It's an interesting dynamic because Costello has delivered consistently when he's been in the team. Dean's not getting any younger. And you just wonder, is that going to be a battle for position rather than, I'm sure Dean will get back. He will be a shoe-in, but if he comes in, then Costello or Paddy Small probably steps out, So again, it's a sign, I suppose, the strength, the depth that Dublin have. Similar to that, actually, one other player that has been impressive is O'Connor in the middle for Kerry, and his athleticism. Kerry have been probably lacking somebody maybe to match Brian Fenton in terms of what he can do, and
Max Verstappen, as I call him.
Yeah, and David Moran.
He's the head off him.
But he come under pressure to hold his position down there. Again, they'll probably bring him back in, but Moran and Geaney were taken off, if you remember, against Kerry in the league game before that third quarter when Kerry kind of upped it afterwards and stuff like that. So I think there's a few young guns pushing to get in some of the big teams, So and the fact you don't have that 5, 6, 7 week period, maybe, Mikey, that you had in the past, that a lot of managers will go on foreign players. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks ahead,
Yeah, just finally, lads, just to finish up, I was interested by Tomás O'Shea's column in the Irish Independent last Saturday, where he very hypocritically, from his own playing experience, brought up the fact that GA players just aren't put out there enough in terms of the media as a tool to promote the game, and he was talking very much referring to Euro 2020, and how we're all getting wall-to-wall coverage now, whether you're interested or not. I'd say everybody's seen the video of Ronaldo pushing the bottles of Coca-Cola out of the way in favour of a bottle of water, and you've got England players doing media every day, etc., etc. I'm just wondering, Anthony, what's your view on it? Do you think you can't force people to be a promotional tool in an amateur game, but at the same time, do too many managers put too many barriers in the way of the players who do want to put their personality out there?
Yeah, some do, I suppose. There's various styles. I suppose during my time in that, Mike, I wouldn't have been too harsh, but you did know some fella was likely to come out with a clanger as well, like on your squad. Like I tell you, you got some eye openers. Like I'd been clear. My first year in Dublin, we got into the Leinster final, beat Wexford, and we had a press night before the Leinster final, as you do, kind of thing. And it was upstairs in Paranoia, but like one of the Sunday newspapers landed on this lady with a blue dress on her. And whatever way I turned around, I was talking to a posse of reporters. Whatever way I turned around, two of the panel were being pictured with this lady with the blue dress, holding her up waist height, like, and I just thought to myself, oh my God, like Brian Cody is blowing Kilkenny going to see this next month. Like, you just, you could be taken advantage of.
They're soft.
Well, how this kind of a circus could go on. So you have to watch out for stuff like that. But I have to say overall, I'd have been easy myself with it. Look, man, never stopped me from saying anything. Yeah, look, it's one of those things. I think some lads I played with just didn't like doing it, and they were like, say, Colin Lynch, for instance. He never did an interview of any sort, and people that didn't know him then were wondering, what's this guy like? And we all know him, salt of the earth sound fella, but that was his style, and I suppose that's just the way it is. Yeah, I'd say in particular, it's more of a problem in hurling, Mike, because of the helmets as well.
This is a big, that's a big problem, Dale. I'm sorry to jump in there. I think it's a massive issue, and I think it's something that the GA really do need to be a bit more cognizant and a small bit more proactive. Like, you would expect the GPA to pick up the baton on this, but they don't really seem to care that much about the promotion and that side of it. Look, I think they're more kind of a welfare organization, so and mental health and all that type of stuff. Whereas the publicity and promotion around the games, which I think the players do have a duty to. I mean, I know people might say, "Oh no, their only duty is to win All Irelands." Well, hang on. You have a duty to promote the game as well. You're custodians of a jersey, whereby you're meant to pass it on in a better nick than you got it. And part of that is games promotion. The best 15 ambassadors that any county will have is the 15 lads that wear the county jersey. Now, I know I totally accept what you're saying in that not everybody will be for media. But there's always a cohort of senior players that you can just say, look, we could put these guys on a rotation and say, look, you go and you do the Star, or you do TV, or you do radio, or you just put it on a rotational basis or something. But it's so important. I mean, if the Limerick team walked into a pub in Dublin, bar maybe Ciaran Lynch and maybe Garrod Hagerty and maybe one or two others, I guarantee you, most people in Dublin would not have a clue who they are.
Maybe they'd like that as well, though, Rory, to be able to sit down and have a quiet pint and not be doing 45 selfies.
Well, that's true. That is true.
They probably have to go to work on Monday as well. Like,
I accept that. But what the point I'm making is, I mean, I was sitting down there now and I was watching a lot of the Euros, and I pre-recorded this Peter Crouch program, which is like a sort of a magazine type show. And in the first two shows, the first show he goes bowling with Jack Grealish, right? And in the second show, he's playing pool with Scott McTominay. Two very bright, articulate, fun lads, really bubbly, plenty of stories, having a bit of crack, having a bit of fun. And these are the cosseted, multimillionaire professionals who we were led to believe are very hard to get access to. Yet, they're sat there in a very relaxed environment and having a bit of crack, and big salespersons at a time when the international game is, blanket bombing its way into every household in the country. Yet our hurlers particularly are invisible, and our footballers remain largely sealed off. And to my mind, we're not really seeing the bigger picture. What do you think? And I think there's a happy medium that needs to be struck.
Whelan, you would have played in a time of you were playing for the biggest team in the country during the Celtic Tiger days, when, let's be honest, anyone who types your name into any photographic agency in Ireland gets a good laugh. Like, you did a lot of photo shoots. A lot of your teammates did a lot of photo shoots. I don't know whether I brought this up before. There's a couple of gems with you and Tomas together, which really you should be getting a tattoo on your forehead of some of these pictures. But anyway, well, you did play, you played in a time when, I would say, due to economic, financial kind of factors, as in it was a boom time in Ireland, and also the Dubs, just like you were on a crest of a wave.
There was also we played, Mikey, probably you're right, in the boom times, and probably commercialism was really coming into the GA,
and the media had started to grow as well. The media had started to expand at a big rate.
There was launches after launches and partnership after partnership, and all the players were probably exposed commercially for the first time, so it became a different environment. Now, on the flip side to that, people would probably point to that and say that we shouldn't have been doing that and we weren't being successful. And that's, there is that paranoia within the GA, and there is that ease to point the finger and criticize when a team isn't successful, to point to angles as to why they might have been successful. And we might have got criticized for having too many commercial because we were probably the biggest team. And I think that leads to a lot of the resistance, because there is a paranoia there among managers and among players that if they are overexposed and they don't deliver on the pitch, that they're
distracted.
They will get people say they're distracted, but they get heavily criticized as well, so I think, I agree with Rory that it's really about balance, in that, there definitely should be more exposure to players, and like that, you have to trust the players you believe that can deal with the media and can come out and talk and give something away but give nothing away at the same time, and it just has to be controlled. We do need a little bit more, but I can, you can accept that, there is a paranoia level there on behalf of managers that, they don't want to be seen to be exposing their team to somewhere where that can lead to criticism if they're not successful. Like, one of the bugbears that I would have is that, particularly over the last I suppose, 18 months, particularly with COVID and without crowds and stuff like that, you know, we still have teams making 5 changes and not notifying anybody till just before the throw in, you know what I mean? And commentators.
We look. In the Dublin, we're playing Roscommon below in Hyde Park, right? And I was taking the game in back at base, and there was no one there. So over the tannoy, at about 10 minutes before the match was thrown in, the guy on the tannoy says, "For Jesus' sake, will you just submit the bloody teams, lads?"
I think Wexford for the last 3 games, 2 late changes, Rory O'Connor and Lee Chin. 3 times in a row, Mike. Would I be right on that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what's the point? Like,
there should be a definitive deadline where they have to submit their teams an hour in advance and people know who's playing and stuff like that. Because and not, you know, managers maybe not given pre-match interviews and stuff like that. Like, again, at least just come out and talk, you know what I mean? So I think we've gone a little bit extreme, that everyone is this fear of giving their opponents that inch or one up at them, or giving them something to stick on the dressing room wall, or give them something to motivate, and everyone just, you know, caves in and doesn't say anything, you know what I mean? So I think it's about balance. John
Kiely, I think, is a really good example of the balance. Like, you go to John, you ask him for a player, you'll never get like that was the other thing, like you get a sub thrown at you for an All-Ireland final preview. I mean, Jesus, like, you know, a guy who you know has no hope in playing, and Davy Fitz is murder for that, by the way. But like,
Dublin are very good at that as well.
Yeah, you know, John Kiely, I think, is somebody who I think has the balance. Like, he never overexposes any one individual player. He kind of has them rotating, you know, whether it might be Garrod, whether it might be Sean Finn, whether it might be Declan Hannon. The other thing as well that I would say, right, do they need as much protection as people think? These are really smart, articulate, intelligent young men and women as well in terms of camogie and ladies football. I think that sometimes there's a control element to this, whereby you're saying, because like when you get these guys and you sit them down, and girls, like, they're well able to talk. They're not stupid. They're not going to say anything that's going to get themselves into trouble. I think they've grown up in an era of mass media now as well, with Snapchat and Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and all those different types of things. So they're much more, I think that they could be much more trusted to give a level of autonomy that they're well capable of dealing with this without the holding of the hands, and just get the balance right, as you said.
Yeah. But Dalo, do you remember many times would you have heard over the years, but sure, didn't he have a big spread in this morning's Sunday paper?
There was a time, Whelan, you were nearly hoping the fella you were going to be marking. There was some big old splash about him in the paper. You nearly say it to him as well. You were all over the paper this morning. I hope this tomorrow morning you'll be all over it, huh?
And they're the crux of the issue.
That's it. Like, and I think that has scared a few people as well. Like,
and those players are now the managers. The players of that era are now the managers.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a big. Yeah, I don't think it would be a big deal, Mike. And I would love to see more hurlers getting exposed to it. I'd be very comfortable as well with a lad that just doesn't want to go down that road. But that's his own.
You know, of course.
Yeah, it's another day's work. Like.
Yeah, that is another day's work. Anyway, lads, it was good chatting to you. Obviously, so we have a Euro 2020 podcast coming at you a couple of times a week now at the moment, so make sure to subscribe to those as well. As I said last week, the rugby podcast is on a hiatus till the Lions starts. The Lions interviews are happening so frequently you'd think they were playing a test this weekend, but we've got a few weeks to wait yet. Thank you, D'Antoni. Thank you to Ciaran. And as always, thank you to Rory. And we will catch you all again next week. Thanks very much.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point. And there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.